So how are you at decision making? I know that there's some folks that are really good about decision making. I mean, they have something going on in their life and boom, they just make the decision just like that. Others take weeks and weeks and weeks to make decisions, and sometimes that's what they need to do in order to feel good about the decision they're making. Still, others don't make decisions at all. They just want someone else to make the decision for them. And I get that, because there's a lot of times where I feel the exact same way. So here's the thing about decision making. I really have a hard time making some decisions. I mean, a while back, some of you may remember, we had to decide whether or not we were going to cancel our Ash Wednesday worship service, and because of the ice storm. That decision just ate at me all day. I mean, it was so difficult to make that decision. Also, if you're looking around here at the table, at my desk here, you're going to see just stacks of books around me. Some of that's because I just can't decide which book I want to read next. And so I put them all here. I keep them all stacked so I'm reminded. So hopefully that will help me make a decision. And, the problem is twofold. One is the stack keeps getting bigger. And the other problem is it drives Melanie nuts. But, that's kind of how I do. That's kind of how I make decisions. I sometimes take a while to do that. And sometimes that's okay, because there's certain things, certain decisions that we got to make that it's okay, because it's personal decisions. But there's other decisions that have such huge implications. And for me, that was kind of like this Ash Wednesday. There's some that have such huge implications that it just eats away at us. And some of those decisions are such that we can see both sides. And when we can see both sides and there's not a clear way forward, we've got to have some other standard to believe or to have in order to make that decision. I mean, it could be what college you're going to go to, who you're going to marry, where you're going to go on vacation. But it can be also those gigantic things that we know could backfire on us. So in the Old Testament, there's the story of the people of Israel as they travel through the desert, and they're promised that they're going to make it into the promised land. God has told them, I've got a land that is prepared for you. And so there's a story in Numbers chapter 13 when the people have made it right there to the kind of the borderline area that would send them off into the promised land. And as they get to that area, they're just not sure if they're ready to move into the area. In some ways, that kind of sounds crazy because they've been wandering for so long. But in other ways, you can understand their fear. So what happens is Moses sends out spies to go into the land of Canaan to check things out, to see what it's like there. And so these spies go and they find that it is a land just as they had been promised, flowing with milk and honey. But they're still not sure. So here's what happens. They come back, the report from the spies. This is verse 25 of chapter 13 of Numbers. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land. And they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregations of the Israelites in the wilderness. And they brought back with them into all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. They told Moses and the people, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. And they show the fruit. But then they say this, yet the people who live in the land are strong, and their towns are fortified and very large. And beside, we saw descendants from Anak. And the Amalekites live in the land and of Negeb, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites. They all live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live by the sea along the Jordan. Do you hear their angst? Yeah, this is a great place. God has given us a great place. The problem is there's really strong people there. And they're very powerful, and the cities are very powerful. And we're just not really sure what to do. Caleb, who was one of the spies, quieted the people before Moses. And he said, let's go up at once and occupy it. But still there's this hesitancy. And the hesitancy is, yeah, it's everything that God told us it would be, but it's still scary. And sometimes that's how decisions are for us. I mean, we feel as if, and maybe it's been a decision that you've taken to God in prayer. Maybe it's one of those decisions that you've really held up and you've thought about for a long time. And you feel as this, yeah, this is the right thing to do. But it's still scary. It's still frightening. And you hear some of those who have checked out this land in the story of Numbers saying, it's just too scary. We can't go. And then you hear Caleb, no, let's go, let's take this over right now. And he goes on to talk about how God is with them. And you see, that's what it comes down to. What it comes down to oftentimes with these decision-making ideas or things that really are causing us great turmoil is we've got to get to the place where we can trust that God's not going to lead us astray. And here's the thing, even if we make a bad decision, God doesn't abandon us in those bad decisions either. And God's going to help us move through that place. God's going to help us conquer those fears that we have. God's going to walk with us even when we may have gone astray, because God's going to try to lead us back. And so oftentimes that's what it comes down to. It's a matter of trust. It's a matter of trust. Do we trust the God who has promised to never leave our side? The other piece is, do we trust the people that God has put in our lives to encourage us? The people like Caleb. Now, for me, I'm still going to struggle with some decisions now and then, like what to preach on, what book to read, what I need to do next, whether or not we cancel a service if things are really crazy. But I also have to understand and believe, just as I learned from the decision we made about Ash Wednesday, God's still going to work through whatever it is we have. And God's still going to be there to bless us in the midst of that. So, whatever decision's facing you, find this place where you can trust in God. And if you need a Caleb, ask a Caleb. Get encouragement. Get what you need, and then move forward in the way God has led you to decide, because God never leaves our side.